All right, magic makers, you know how huge I am on habits. I feel that habits are what is going to give you that sustainable results. And so when any of my clients are like, Kim, I'm not getting results, I'm like, okay, let's go back to our bare minimum. Let's go back to looking at our planning, and a lot of that came from just my corporate career. My corporate career before this, I did a lot of meeting planning and I had to do a lot of planning. And that meant that also, boiled into me having to plan things in my life. The other thing is I grew up with a single mom. And, if she didn't plan stuff out, things were just not going to get done. She was a single mom with two kids. She just had to like get all of her things together. So I've learned those things. It just kind of was been like internalized from me. But so I've always been a really huge reader for my entire life. I've always read a lot of books, and in my adult life, I feel there are three books that have really changed and have helped me to like embody things into my like day-to-day life. The first book I read was a book called Good to Great. And it really was saying that, what separates good companies from great companies. And it was just a lot of it came down to their systems, right? If a good company had great systems to grow, great systems to add new products, great systems to cultivate the culture in their companies, they thrive. And they're in the Fortune 50, Fortune 10, and we've heard of them for years and years to come. If they were just good companies and they didn't have good systems and they weren't able to overcome obstacles, roadblocks, whatever you want to call them, they're companies that are now like, hey, do you ever remember shopping at Sears? Do you ever remember, there's a local brand here in Boston. Do you remember going to Leachman, right? Those are the companies that we don't hear about. But, the companies that went from good to great, they're still around here. Like Best Buy is still around. Target is still around. The second book that I read that was just another game changer for me was The Power of One Thing, right? I've talked about this book. And the Power of One Thing, the big thing I took away from that is that I was chasing too many things, trying to be good at everything and sucking big time. So instead of trying to do one thing, I was like, what is that one domino that's going to knock everything down? And that was like another game changer for me. And the last book is like the most recent book, and it's been out for a while, but it's Atomic Habits. And I've talked about it, and it's by a guy by the name of James Clear. And I really wanted to break it down because, I try not to date these shows, but I'm going to date it. We're about knocking on the door of almost 100 days before summer. And here is the time when I see a lot of my clients with all the vim and vigor they had coming into the beginning of the year start to wobble. And they start to be like, oh, summer's coming. And then, they're like, I can't control shit. It's summer. The hell you can't. You can control summer, right? So I'm going to break down James Clear's Atomic Habits in a way that helps us to better understand how we can break down summer. And through that, you're going to start to think about, okay, what are some of the things that trip me up when summer comes? What are the things that trip me up holidays? What are the things that trip me up vacation? So you can start to like get a clearer picture, right? Because the clearer I am about where I want to go, guess what? My feet are going to move in that direction. So the quote that stands out the most for me in James Clear's book is that success is a product of your daily habits, not a once in a lifetime transaction. So the best way I can think about this for you is that have you ever saved up for something big, a vacation, a house, a car? And it is like these little, it's like these little things, $20 here, $100 there. And eventually you're like, hey, dang, we got the down payment. And then, you or you're maybe you're paying off debt and you're like, a little bit of here, a little bit here. And like, oh my God, the card's paid off. That is how healthy habits are. So many of you want this like, hey, go to Amazon, buy these 5 things. And by the end of the month, boom, 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 you're free and clear. That's just not how health and fitness works, especially over 40. The shit we used to be able to get away with before ain't gonna happen, girlfriend. Ain't going to happen. We got to learn some new tricks. We have to be better about how we treat ourselves because the whole like, sprinting to the finish line and then like, catching my breath out there, that's not going to work. So my goal is in this podcast is that I'm going to start to help you create these atomic habits so that we're no longer playing the sprint, rest game when it comes to our health and our fitness. So James breaks it into three things. He says, we all know what the outcome we want. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to lose the belly fat. I want to do 10 push-ups, right? That's outcome. That's what I'm trying to get. That's the transformation that I want. But I need a process. How are you going to get there? And this is where many of us get tripped up. Many of us, if I'm trying to lose 20 pounds, you're like, 10 years ago, I ate 5 meals a day. I went to the gym 90 minutes. This is what I did. Well, girlfriend, can you do that anymore? You got 3 kids. You got a full-time job. Maybe you don't have the same level of childcare support. Maybe your kids are, in very active in sports, dance. You have it. They're just running you ragged. You're like, kids Uber. So we have to start to think about like the process that I took previously. Can I sustain that? Because ultimately, I want you to work your reps. It's realistic. You're excited about it. You can make a plan for it in your life, not when like, if all the stars align, no, like your daily life, and ultimately sustainable, something that isn't a 30-day thing, an 8-week thing. It is like, you know what? I've learned this and I can repeat this over and over and over again until the day I die. And then finally, it has to be your identity. So I want you to think about identity as, if someone asks you, tell me about yourself. We talk in identity. So we're like, I'm a mom. I work at a particular place or whatever you do for a living. Maybe you play a sport. Maybe you have a hobby. So we start to talk about what these identities. So the identity is, I am someone who is a healthy eater. I am someone who goes to the gym. I am someone who blah, 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 whatever it is of the outcome that you want. Because if you tell yourself, I want to lose 20 pounds, I want to get this weight off me. Okay, who are you? Who is that person that isn't always going up 20, down 20, up 20, down 20? Who is that person? Who do you have to become so that that's not you? Because right now, that's your identity. I'm the yo-yo dieter. That's what your identity is. And I know you don't want to be that. Or I'm the bad sleeper. Well, if I keep telling myself that, my subconscious is always going to be like, we're just a shitty sleeper. So let's just not be a good sleeper. And I get it. Yeah. You're over 40, maybe your hormones are getting a little buck wild. That's okay. That's fine. Let's talk about that. There are things you can do about that, but you just can't be like, I'm a shitty sleeper, boop, 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 and go off on your way. Now's here where I want all of us for my perfectionist, I'm talking to you. I am talking to you. So one of my former clients, Heather, she will identify, she's like, I am a perfectionist. You're absolutely right, Kim. I'm a perfectionist. And one of the ways we had to break her of that, a few things, is that work on being 1% better every single day. 1%. And I'm going to attach this in, the show notes, but there is a video, and it talks about water boiling, and water boils at 212 degrees, right? That's when water boils. And if Mr. Pintavalli, if you're listening, I retained something from science class. Okay, I'm lying. It's only because I saw that video that I retained at 212. So boils at 212. And so as you watch the video, you'll just see like, it's boiling. And so many people, they want to give up, right before like the boil happens. You're like, it's just taking too long, it's not happening. And then all of a sudden the water just boils. That's the same thing with our goals. I'll also attach this in the show notes. James Clear does a thing with ice, right? Ice is frozen, and then at I think it's like 30 degrees, like 31 or 30 degrees, that you start to see the sweat on the outside of the ice. But like it takes a little bit of time for that sweat to start to build. And so for many of us, we wake up on Monday and we're like, there's 20 pounds, this is the day. And if I haven't lost 20 pounds, or if I don't look visually slimmer by Friday, I'm pissed, right? And many of you heard me talk about Amazon. Your body is not Amazon Prime. It's just not going to be like, boom, oh, you want to lose weight, girl? Let's do it. No, your body's been like, girl, you've been dieting me since you were 15 years old. I am not going to give you shit because every single time you beat me into submission, and then what do? We go back on we go buck wild, and then we go on another diet, and you beat me into submission. I ain't having it. So what we do is focus on that 1% better. That's how you get better. 1% better. So if I get 1% better every single year, I'm getting 52% better. I'm sorry, 365% better over the course of the year. It's just a small little molecule. And so as we start to think about these outcomes, right? The outcomes turn into goals, but those goals need a system. And so another great quote from James Clear is that bad habits repeat themselves again and again and again, not because we don't want to change, but because we have the wrong system to change. And I see this regularly. The system that you have is sprinting. The system that you have is restriction. The system that you have is deprivation. And it's only but so long that you can deprive yourself. One of my old coaches said this to me, and it always plays in my mind. You can go hard, you could go long, but you can't go hard for long. And how long can you go before the dam breaks? You tell yourself, I'm not going to have, and then all of a sudden your body's like, nope. And then it's just like, bring it on. It all just goes flying into your mouth. So here's where I have to ask you, right? Like, we need to create systems. And one of the things that I share with my clients, and I've shared with you, come up with your non-negotiables, right? These are the things that you're like, you know what? If I do these 3 things, 1 to 3 things every single day, I'm going to stay on track. I know that. And they are, in the beginning, they're going to be challenging, but doable. And eventually you're like, but it's just what you do. So I did this probably 8 years ago when I went on my dream vacation, and I didn't want to be that girl, right? I was sick of being that girl who was always like, good food, bad food. What should I have? Like, what could I eat? You know, and always in the back of my mind, having this low level freaking anxiety about food. So how it works is pick 1 to 3 things. And so for me, it was, all right, I want to make sure I get in my vegetables. So every single day I have a big ass salad with protein on it. That's what I do. That's who I am every single day. And I can do that at a restaurant. I can do that at home. Second place I go is sleep, right? I know for me that when I don't sleep a lot, I am a hungry hippo. So I make sure I set a bedtime like I'm 9 years old. I get my booty in bed by 10 o'clock, lights out. Then on the third thing is working out. I know that for me, I'm like, my bare minimum, right? My bare minimum is 3 days a week. But most weeks I typically hit 5. But I have to have that bare minimum because we all have those weeks, right? You know, travel, family coming to town, just appointments, just, you know, life. I live in New England, snow. So just little those things that I'm like, okay, what is, and then I said, I'm like 30 minutes. So that way I'm like, I give myself that, like, I used to be it has to be 2 hours. If I'm not there at gym at 2 hours, it's shit. No, right? There's what I have to. So then I became that person. I'm the person who hits my bare minimums every single day. That's who I am. So I want you to really think about that, because when my clients come to me like, oh, Kim, like things are all crazy. I'm like, okay, what are your non-negotiables? Are you hitting them? And it's like, well, no. It's a yes or no question. And if you're not hitting them, the question is, maybe they're a little bit too challenging, or maybe you're just trying to wing it. And I am a recovering winger, and winging just don't cut it if you are trying to stop feeling like a freaking dieter, because your habits are the pathway to changing your identity. And I want you to think about it like this. Have you ever been on a path? So I live here in Boston, and we have the Esplanade. And on parts of the Esplanade, it's well lit, right? You know exactly where you're going, and some of the path ain't so lit. So habits are the lighted path that you know exactly where you're going. You know, it's like the yellow brick road, right? You know, Dorothy was told to follow the yellow brick road, and it's going to lead her to Oz. We're going to freaking Oz, but we have to follow the yellow brick road. We might meet some interesting characters along the way, but we are on our way to the yellow brick road. So in James's book, he talks about there's 4 ways to change your behavior, and he calls it a habit loop. And he says there has to be a cue in order for you to be like, hey, this is when I need to do it. There needs to be a craving for it. There's then a response, and then there's a reward. All right, so let me just break down, like, let's just take it into 4 steps. So the cue, you have to make the cue so like bloody obvious that you're like, oh, I'm doing this, so now that means I need to take the next step. So one of the easiest ways that I do it is I'm a habit stacker. So what that means when I'm a habit stacker. So what does that mean? For me, when I habit stack, I put it right next to something that I already know I'm going to do. So I've shared this before, and it's the easiest description here for all of us to take into effect. So when I habit stack, I get up every morning, I brush my teeth, and I wash my face, right? And so when I do that, I keep a jug of water. I keep my water bottle, fill it like the night before. I fill it with water, and I put it on my and speaking, I'm going to take a sip right now. I fill it with water, and I put it on my sink. And when I put it on my sink, I brush my teeth, I wash my face, and then I start drinking. So I'm getting dressed, even if I'm changing into my day jammies, I'm drinking the water while I get dressed. I'm drinking the water till I go downstairs and I get a cup of coffee. Now, back when I used to have while I'm waiting for the coffee to brew, I continue drinking that water, and I don't have that first cup of coffee until I finish drinking that water bottle. And that's a habit stack. So I want you to think about it. After I brush my teeth, I will drink my water. So those are the things that I want you to start thinking about, so that the habit comes after something that you're already doing. I'm already going to brush my teeth. I'm already brushing my teeth. I'm already drinking coffee. So those are 2 well-established habits that I'm going to do. The other way that I drink my water is that every time I go to the gym or I teach a class, and I'm like, okay, by the end of this class, I have to drink this entire thing of water. That's the habit stack that I've established. It's something that I've already done. So how do you wedge in a new habit that you are going to do? The other thing is, like, if you're like, oh, I don't know, like, what I do every day, that's okay. So then you start writing down, like, what are the things you do every day? Like, most of us get dressed every day. Most of us brush our teeth every day. Something that you drive somewhere every day. Maybe you drive somewhere every day. Maybe you have a certain meeting every day. So like, start to think about all the things you have and be like, okay, what are some of the things I'm trying to accomplish? And maybe I can start to wedge in, if I want to drink more water, wedge it into there. Like, maybe I bring my water bottle, and I make sure that I drink my water from during my commute, right? Instead of drinking coffee, I drink my water. Those sorts of things. So start to think about that in your mind. The other place is start to think about, how do I create visual cues? So for me, the night before I go to bed, I lay out my workout clothes so that in the morning, all I need to do is get dressed. Like, that's it. All I have to do is wake up, be like, the clothes right there. This is what I'm doing this morning. Like, I can still have sleep in my eyes. I can still be half asleep. I see my workout clothes, and I know that that's what's happening this morning, so that I don't need to start to think about it. In the book, James gives an example of he wanted to learn how to play the guitar. So he left the guitar. I'm trying to speak. He left the guitar out so that it would be like, it was just a visual trigger. Like, oh yeah, I'm making sure that I play whatever notes every single day. So start to think about, what is the cue? It has to be obvious. Like, it can't be like some hidden thing. It has to be like blatantly obvious so that you'll want to do it. So the second part is so it goes cue, then it goes craving. So you have to make it attractive, right? So create it to something that you already enjoy. Like I said, I enjoy coffee, so water went with the coffee, So maybe you love Netflix and you're trying to get yourself to exercise. Well, maybe you download your favorite episode of whatever thing you're binging right now, and that's the only time you can watch it is when you're on a piece of cardio equipment, or maybe you have your favorite podcast and you can only listen to your favorite podcast on the days you go for a walk, or you go to the gym and that's the only time you can listen to it. So it gives you that, like, subtle bribe, if you will, that we all sometimes need. We all need to bribe ourselves from time to time. The other thing is that, can we make a ritual out of it? Like my morning is a whole ritual. Do we need to have this 20-step morning routine? No, not at all. But I know for me, like, coffee is my thing. Coffee is my, like, Kim time, my, like, introduction to the new day. And even, the handful of times that I teach in the morning, I get up an extra 15 minutes early so I could have a leisurely cup of coffee. Like, that just sets the tone for my day for me. So what are some of the can you ritualize some of these habits? Maybe it's a special water bottle, or maybe you only drink a special type of water, or some special, coffee, so that, like, it just makes you light up. Maybe you start to associate with different people who they already have the identity that you have. Maybe you make healthy friends. I know my good friend Leanne and I, we used to text each other all the time with accountability. I would text her the night before and be like, all right, tomorrow morning I'm doing A, B, and C. And like by 7 a.m., she'd be like, girl, what'd you do? And, because I knew the text was coming. So start to think about, can you be around people who are really going to hold you accountable to your stuff? That's one of I would say, my strengths is that I'm really good at holding people accountable to what they say they're going to do. And then I have to make it easy, right? I have to make it easy. I can't make it really hard. Like I said, the water bottle, I already had a water bottle. So all I had to do was take it from my kitchen and bring it to my bathroom. So it wasn't this like, oh, I have to go outside and pump water before I drink the water. So I have to make it not a challenging, but doable, right? That's the word I want you to say. And habits, they're not formed by time, right? It's formed by repetition, repetition. So think about when you're a kid and we had to memorize the multiplication table. Now you can just multiply 8 by 8. You can just rattle off in your head, 8 by 8 is 64, 8 times 9 is 72, right? You could just keep going on and on and on, because it's just we had like repetition. You can name the state capitals. I was third place in the great state capitals champion in 5th grade. Just saying, that's still on my resume. But yeah, from repetition, think about those kids in the freaking spelling bee, sweet Georgia Brown. Some of the words those people can spell. Woo! I barely spell restaurant, and they're spelling like, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, which I'm like, unless it was like in a hip hop song and you had to sing it to the hip hop song, I couldn't spell that word. So I really wanted to think about how can we, like, make it so that we're repeating it, not to be perfect, right? Because when you first start this, you're gonna suck. It's okay. Everyone sucks in the beginning. Then you just you move through it. You suck, you move through it. You suck, you move through it. We bob and weave. We learn new tricks. We learn new techniques as we navigate this. And another thing, I'm writing all this stuff down so I can put in the show notes. So Mel Robbins, and I've talked about her before, she does this thing called the 5-second rule, right? So she just like the kind of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 blast off. She's like, sometimes you have to trick yourself into it. So as we're doing it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get your booty off and out and doing whatever the hell it is that you're looking to get done. But the habit should be really simple in the beginning. I want you to set these like really simple, almost they do feel challenging, but because it's something new for you, but it also feels effortless, right? So when I say that, like my water, it's 2 minutes. Literally, I fill this up at night. I put it on my sink. I don't know. I don't even know if it takes me 2 minutes. It might take me that longer because my ice machine sucks, but that's about it. Um, Making coffee. It feels like it takes 4 hours, but it probably takes 2 minutes. I drink it again until I finish it, right? So it has to be so, this becomes automatic. Like it's what you do, it's what you do, it's what you do. Like I don't have to like wait for someone to do something. I don't have to wait for like the moon to align or Mars to go retrograde. It's just like boom, 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 right? So I've repeated it I started this during COVID. So I've repeated it for the last almost 3 years. And now it's what I do. I don't even think about it. I'm like, oh, there's my water bottle. Like it's bright. My water bottle's bright freaking red. If I know the day I can't see bright freaking red, I'm going to have to call 911. Clearly something's wrong with me. That's what I want you to start to think about. How do we start to do this? And so then my reward, it's immediate satisfaction. One, satisfaction that I did it, like, I don't know about you, but I like checking my boxes, right? So satisfaction that boom, I started this habit and I did it, I talked about this before. So Jerry Seinfeld, when he first started as a comedian, he said a comedian has a good, what do you call it? Like a bank, a good catalog. There it is, a good catalog of jokes. So I gotta write a joke. Some jokes are gonna suck. Some jokes are gonna be okay, but I have to have a good catalog of jokes. So every single day he challenged himself to write a joke, and he had the old school calendar, and he pulled it up. Um, he pulled it up, and every day he put an X through the days he wrote a joke, and he said, "Don't break the chain." And that was like, for me, I need that visual cue, right? I'm a paper calendar as well as a electronic calendar, and so I need the like, don't break the X, Kim, as I start doing these. So that gives me that immediate satisfaction, because as humans, we respond to two things: rewards and rewards and punishments. And so when I was getting, I can't remember what certification I was getting. I think it was in my wellness coaches certification. Um, the instructor told us about a client who she was trying to go to the gym, and so she went to like a high-end gym that was, a couple $100 a month to go to the gym. And she said, she needed the punishment. So she's like, I need to see that come out of my checking account every month to be like, get my booty to the gym, because I'm paying all this money, right? Because most people, Planet Fitness, Planet Fitness relies on you paying $19.99 a month and not go. Because you're like, oh, it's $20, right? It's $20. Why would I go? And now with the whole hashtag van life, most people are using it to take a shower across the entire country. So there's that. So going back to the example. So she was like, I'm going to go to, expensive gym so I can, it feels painful, feels like punishment every time that transaction comes out. And then she's like, okay, to get the most bang for my buck, I'm making this number up because I can't remember the exact number. She's like, I need to go 10 times to the gym in order to break even. So anytime she went less than 10 times, she would put $50 out in the street for someone to take. And that was her punishment. Like she responded well to the punishment. Now, some of you might respond to the reward. So, okay, if I told myself I was going to the gym 3 times a week, maybe if I every time I hit that third time, just for me, just the fact that I did it, I was accountable to myself. I'm ecstatic. I'm like, whoop, whoop, right? If I see the X's blocked, I'm ecstatic. Or maybe you're like, okay, if I do that and I do it for a month, you're going to reward yourself. I'm going to highly recommend that you do not reward yourself with food, but maybe it's like, you know what? I'm going to reward myself and I'm going to just have a day where I sit on my butt and I just, Netflix and chill. Maybe it's a day that I'm just going to have a date with myself, whatever brings you joy, So this is like your kind of like your own kind of like personal loyalty program. And having that habit, tracker, there's umpteen habit trackers that you can either do on your cell phone. You can do like paper ones. There's like a bunch of Google Docky type things. But that is how you start to create these atomic habits, right? There's a cue that sets off the thought process, like, oh, when I do this, then I do this. You take the action and you get the reward, right? So that's how the 4-step process works. I can't think of the guy. I'm going to give you another book. It's called the Habit Loop, but I have to Google because I can't remember what his name is. But he's the same thing. There's a cue, there's a response, and it all comes down to that. Now, for those of you who are like, well, I have some bad habits that I want to break. Great. I'm with you. I'm down for that. But before I move on, I just want to say one more thing, is that what gets measured gets done. And so if you're a client of mine and you're listening, I'm going to say you can't set squishy identities. So my identity is someone who's toned. What is that? That's a soap from the 80s to me. It used to smell really good. I loved it. I don't even know if they make it anymore. I'm gonna have to Google that. Anyway, back to you. What does that mean? The identity, that's a squishy goal, because if you told someone, hi, I'm Kim, I'm toned, I'm like, what? Huh? I don't know what that means. Hi, I'm Kim, and I'm someone who strength trains. Great, fabulous. I know exactly what that is. Hi, I'm Kim, and I'm someone who runs a half marathon. Awesome. God love you. If you see me running, it's a cry for help. Call 911. So what gets measured gets done. I want you to start to really think that in your head. How are you going to measure that you're moving towards the identity? Because remember at the beginning of this, I talked about your outcomes comes from a process, and that process is your systems. Because if I don't have a system, I'm always going to be going back to the drawing board and always going to feel like, oh, am I ever going to freaking get there? Right? Because it's like we let our systems fall apart. And in my course, the Belly Fat Code, I talk about we have two thoughts in our heads when we are we have two thoughts in our head when we are out and about. And so we have the thought of I just totally lost my train of thought, but it's coming back to me. So we think about, we have choices and we have decisions, right? So if I go out to a restaurant and I say to myself, you know what? I don't really eat Mexican food all that much. So I'm going to go and I'm going to have a margarita and I'm going to have a couple tacos, right? I've made that choice. Like, this is how it's going to happen. This is exactly what I'm going to do. Now, there's other thing where it's just like, I just let life happen. I'm there. In my mind, I tell myself this is what I'm going to do. But then I get there and Sharon's having an extra margarita and Jill's having a burrito with extra guac and extra sour cream. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm going to miss out. And then I shift and I decide right there on the spot that I'm going off to the right versus staying with my choice. So I want you to start to think about those kind of things as you are starting to put this through, because if I go back to my system, in my system, I tell myself when I go to a restaurant, this is how it's going to be. And if I make these split second decisions, boom, I'm screwed. Okay. Now the last piece here is, as I started talking about, Kim, I got bad habits. I need to break some bad habits. Great. So we have to reduce our exposure to those bad habits, right? Make it invisible. Just how I have to make the habit visible. Remember, I talked about, I lay out my gym clothes. Boom. As soon as I lay out my gym clothes, I know, all right, this is what we're doing this morning. So I have to reduce the exposure to it. So if I know that if I am trying to break the habit, and I know that every time I go to a Mexican restaurant, I'm going to have a margarita and everything on the menu, I'm going to suggest us not going to a Mexican restaurant, right? Until I can start to build up my reps underneath my belt before I can get to that point where I can start making better choices if I go to that restaurant. I'm not asking you to not be social. I'm just asking you, like, can we steer it away from the temptation, right? I used to walk to work, and I would have to walk past this really awesome ice cream place. And so how do I reduce the exposure? I crossed the street. Like, it was just a really like simple thing. I crossed the street. I made it a simple thing. Now it's like I have to change my mindset around said thing. So if it's Mexican food, and I tell myself, oh, I just can't resist Mexican food. It just calls to me in the sleep. It's just like margaritas are like, hey girl, hey, and I have to say to myself, like, you know what? I'm the person who can have one margarita. I'm the person who can have, just one serving. I'm the person who can not have chips delivered to the table. And we start to say that to ourselves to make it unattractive, because at the very beginning of this podcast, I talked about, how many of us tell ourselves these stories like, I'm just the person who can't sleep. I'm the person who just can't. I'm an overeater. I'm the person who just can't. Right. But if I start to say, like, you know what? I'm the person who is becoming responsible when I go to a Mexican restaurant. I'm the person who does have one margarita. I'm the person who does, make a choice before I head to the restaurant and have it. And so we talked about increasing. So then we have to, we talked about reducing the friction to build it. Now let's add friction. So like I said, you don't go to a Mexican restaurant, or you're like, you know what? I only go to a Mexican restaurant on days that I do both strength and cardio. I go to a Mexican restaurant only on, Cinco de Mayo. I only go to Mexican restaurant on my birthday. So we were like adding these little layers that make it a little bit more challenging for us to just randomly, swing by a Mexican restaurant. And then you start to create a contract with yourself, starting to, ask yourself, again, are you a reward person, or are you a punishment person? And start to kind of play with like, what are the contracts you are going to make with yourself? And, the one thing about habits, it takes time, right? We're not going to wake up on Monday and be like, boom, nailed it. No, like it's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel like we're going through quicksand. But here's what I know is that when I started creating these non-negotiables, I finally was able to break out of my desperate dieter relationship. I was finally able to get free of my low level anxiety about doing social events, and always thinking like, oh, how am I going to blow it? Oh, I blew it. And I'm laying awake at night being like, how can I make up for this? Right. Those thoughts started to go away. And if you are just sick of having those thoughts, or sick of always feeling like I went off track, right? This is how we get back on track, right? Here's how we get back on track. Here's how we stop getting off track, so that we can easily go back to our habits, look at our systems, right? Think about it, your car. You're driving in your car, like cars are now so smart. You're driving your car, and I don't know about your car, but I drive my car, there's like a yellow outline of a car, like when my car is needing something. And so then, I go into the panel and it says, time to change your oil, Kim. Or, another thing, like, I have like automatic tire pressure sensors, and a little thing pops up, tire pressure is low, Kim, right? Our bodies don't do that. It would be really great for our bodies to do that. But here's where, we can create these little habits that give us these little, like, ways to check in with our systems, because a diet isn't a system. A diet is saying, do this or die, where you are saying, here are the systems I create in my life. And that way it gives you that flexibility, but it gives you that structure. And at the end of the day, you stop following a diet because it becomes too hard. It becomes, I don't want to fucking eat like this anymore. It becomes, you can't find a kiwi when you're on vacation, whatever it is. So here's where we kind of start to say, how do I start to create these really simple habits? And it starts by saying, how do I say who it is that I want to get the outcome that I want? In order to get that outcome, I need to have a series of processes. Those processes are systems, and that is going to create the identity that I want to become. Because here's the thing, right? Many of you, I remember when I first started coaching, one of my former clients, she said, Kim, I'm going to lose this 20 pounds and I never have to diet again. And I was like, huh, interesting. And I was like, do you really believe that? And she's like, yeah. She goes, once you lose the weight, you lose the weight. I'm like, that would be fabulous. But once you lose the weight, you have to go into a way to maintain that weight. All right. And so this is where your habits come in, because there isn't a finish line. I know everyone thinks it's a finish line. And, I live in Boston. So at the end of the marathon, they give these foil jacket kind of things. There's no finish line with a foil jacket. I'm going to give you I'm going to give you a foil jacket because I always think you should celebrate every milestone that you hit. But then here's where, when I used to compete, my coach would be like, all right, Kim, in a week, let's regroup and say, what's the next thing? Because it's really easy to be like, oh, I lost me 20 pounds. I'm going to celebrate. And you're like, it's with food, it's whatever. And then you disappear, you lose your habits because they were too hard. And then we're back to where we were before. So here's where knowing that habits add up, right? 1% better every single day. If I enjoy what I'm doing, I want to stick with it, right? If I hate it, I feel like I need to struggle. I'm not going to fucking do it. Bottom line, end of story. So, and also the last thing I'm going to leave you with is that consistency is boring, right? I am a very boring person. I am a very consistent person. I am boring as hell because I do the same shit every single day. Or if not the same shit every single day, every Sunday, this is what my Sunday looks like. This is what my Monday looks like. This is what my Tuesday looks like. From time to time, yeah, it does change, but this is what my weeks and days look like because I've built up that consistency. And so, as you know, with that Fit Girl Magic formula is when I have great habits, I've built a great routine. When I have a great routine, I have built consistency. And when I have consistency, I have long lasting results. So if you want some of that in your life, rewind this podcast and start to create your habits. And if you need any more support on that, please reach out. Don't be shy, my friend. Do not be shy. And if there's anything that resonated with you at all in this podcast, do me a favor, screenshot it and let me know what was the aha that you got out of this podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a fabulous day, and I will speak with you next week.